What's going on, guys? Welcome back to NolanTCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and it is for Prank Kids. So I took this to locals on the past weekend after I picked up the Meow Meows, and I ended up coming first with this. Very surprisingly, I wasn't expecting to go so well so early, but I guess now everyone will kind of learn how the deck works and start to counter me a bit more, so this list is probably going to need to change going forward. Originally, I did have some, issues with the list that I had chosen, but after, sitting down and, rethinking about it, I do think I've made the correct choices. So, we'll take you through my list after this. But as always, please do remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people to the channel. And, yeah, let's get into the profile for this one. Okay, so starting us off, we've got 3 copies of Lampsies, as always. Burn 500, good for time. This deck is, really, really, really good in time. Followed up with the Dropsies, giving you that 1500 life point disparity. So yeah, obviously with all the Prank Kids monsters, when you use them for a link or fusion material of a Prank Kids monster, you trigger their effect and then summon one from deck. So, 1500 life point disparity from the gain 1000, burn 500, which is always good. We have the Foolish Burial Goods, which is always great. You can really put your plane into grave. You can go with that, or you can put whatever tech card you need. Say you get ashed on your the Cock-a-doodle-doo. If your Cock-a-doodle-doo gets ashed, you can just dump with Fansies and then tribute your Cock-a-doodle-doo to add back the card that you need to keep your plays going. So Fansies is amazing. Also, Thunder card, bring Colossus back. Then we've got 2 copies of Roxy's. Originally I thought 3, it was bad for me to not play 3. I chose to play a Terraforming instead, but ultimately I realized that the field spell helps you play around Ash so much more. So playing that Terraforming over the Roxy's is great. There is an Abyss Dweller in the extra deck, but we are playing the Instant Fusion as well, which opens up your Abyss Dweller play with the Roxy's. So ultimately I felt as though the Roxy's at 2 is correct for the time being. That could change going forward though. Also, I don't like the fact that you have to banish card from hand. I find I'm always banishing a resource that I could use a hand trap or something for the opponent's turn. It's always frustrating to do that. And that's why I don't like Roxy's. But yeah, Roxy's at 2. Then for the final monster, we're playing 3 copies of Ash, simply because, Ash good card. Why not play Ash? Then for the spells, we've got 3 copies of Prank Kids Place along with the Terraforming. This is not a Mystic Mind build. This is just, a pure consistency-related combo build, which is why we're playing the 3 copies of Prank Kids Place. We want to play a starter. If you do want to play the third Roxy's, I'd probably recommend cutting the Terraforming for it. But as I said before, I do feel as though the Prank Kids Place helps you play around that initial hand trap. Granted, normally you will just have a monster in hand anyway to summon, so it is Ash bait 9 times out of 10. But if this does touch board, you can chain block the Ash anyway, so the Ash won't be able to hit you with a key part in your combo, which is why the Prank Kids Place becomes so much more necessary. Then we've got 3 copies of Pandemonium. Also, sorry, on the topic of Prank Kids Place, it does help you out Dragoon. So it is primarily there to search you stuff and be more consistent, but the attack changes do really, really help you out Dragoon, which is always great. But then of course, yeah, we do have the Fusion Spell, which is 3 copies of Pandemonium. Ultimately, Fusion Spell does lock you into Prank Kids monsters, which is a little bit rough, but you normally have finished your combo chain before you activate your Pandemonium anyway, or you're using it on your opponent's turn because it's a quick play, so that should never really come up or hurt you too badly, unless you've had to use a Pandemonium at the start of your turn to generate a Rocket Ride or something to help you play. Then we've got 2 copies of Pranks. This helps you shuffle back in end phase to keep your resource game going. Can also generate you that token that helps you push that little bit further. Then we've got 3 copies of Polymerization. This is primarily a fusion deck, even though it is now looking as though it's a link deck with a handsome link 1. The 3 copies of Polymerization are still pretty important. Opening this is insane when you just have the resources. It helps you play around hand traps. If you get impermed, you're just yeah, cool, Poly. We'll just go a different route of this combo and still end in the same place, which is why it's so good. Then we've got 1 copy of Instant Fusion. This helps you totally awesome, and Abyss Dweller plays resolve consistently. If you open Instant Fusion plus any summon, essentially you can do the standard combo plus you end on the Dweller or the whatchamacallit, the card that does the totally awesome things. That card. But yeah, ultimately, if you open this plus a normal summon, you can end on like the Harpy's Feather Duster plus that. If you open a way to get to Thunder Dragon Fusion, you can also end on the Regeki as well in that combo, which is always great. You can alternatively, if you're not interested in doing the Harpy's Feather Duster, you can go into the Verte instead, dump the Thunder Dragon Fusion, then you end on like the Regeki instead if you want to do that. You'll have like the Regeki, the Bow Wow Bark to return cards on your opponent's turn. Also does then protect you from card effects. You'll have that like lonely little Predator Plant on board, which can hurt a little bit, but you will have shuffled resources back. You'll have the Thunder Dragon Fusion to get you the Lampsies out of deck, which is always good for the follow-up turn plays, which then can probably get you into a Moral Sword because you've got the Predator Plant still sitting on board. Then we've got some tech card slots. These can be tricked out to anything you like. This is just what I'm playing at the moment. Again, this list will probably change going forward. When the new ban list drops, keep an eye out because we'll probably drop another list for this with a bit of an update. But for this one, we've got 1, 2, and the third Forbidden Droplets I've just dropped on the floor. And I really didn't want to move my chair just in case I ran it over. But I see it, so we can move the chair now. But a third Forbidden Droplet comes out. It's always good to just like drop cards like this on the floor. Like, spend money, drop on floor. That's how it works. Then we've got 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. After that, again, this card can be cut if you want to switch it for something else. If you want to play like more of a budget build, these cards can literally just be like anything that you feel you want to play in the deck. They can hell be that Mystic Mine kind of play. You can play a Fusion Psychic Plant over it instead if you want to do that. I've just found that like this is your called by now, so this is the way I play it. Then I've got 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. At my locals, there is like the odd person running around. It's just playing Mystic Mine, so Harpy's Feather Duster is like kind of necessary to out that so you can keep playing. When you're going second, of course. When you're going first, you just make a Harpy's Feather Duster yourself and then use that because it's better. Then we've got 2 copies of Prankid's Plan after that. This is the primary card that I like to dump off my Lampsies when I'm not going to recur the card that I've used. So I send the Prankid's Plan because it can get you around the battle stuff. Surprisingly, this stops AA Zeus from hitting board when your opponent goes like, oh, I'm going to attack over you. And you just go, Plan, your monster is now destroyed. Very fun thing to do. Then, finally, rounding out the main deck, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Next off now, we've got the extra deck, and the star of the show that makes this whole deck go around now is 3 copies of Meow Meow. Don't be an idiot like me and forget that it's hard once per turn on the summon. So, don't do that. I definitely forgot that. Like, very first game of the very first round, I was like, summon the second Meow Meow? Oh, wait, no, I can't. So, that's something to keep in mind. You cannot switch it for something else because it does not trigger. So this is why this card's so important. So you got to play 3 copies of Meow Meow. The reason why I'm playing 3 is because these banish from grave to like use the effect. So you can't recur them with other resources. Otherwise, you just do it that way, but you can't. So you've got to play 3 Meow Meow in my opinion. Simply because you want to have 1 for like turns 1, 2, and 3 to ensure that you can play out the grind game as much as you can. Then we've got 2 copies of Do Doodle Doo after that. Your primary link that you go into on your turn to do the search can also recur the grave. Great card. The card that recurs on your opponent's turn. That is the Bow Wow Bark. Card's solid. Does that added protection as well, which like does come up quite a lot, which is really, really good. There's been times that I'm sitting here like, oh, maybe I'd like a second Bow Wow Bark, but I don't really like where the space would come from to remove that, because you'll see that later. Then, finishing off the links for Prank Kids, we've got 1 Rip Roaring Rooster, the Harpy's Feather Duster. Card is great. You can resolve it twice now, and it's really, really good. Then we've got 1 Verte for dumping your Thunder Dragon Fusion for summoning the Regeki in the mid-game. You can shuffle back those resources with the Thunder Dragon Fusion, keep playing later. Then we've got 1 copy of Moral Sword Dragon to push for game. I'm not playing like the access code combo because I am choosing to play more Prank Kids than normal in an extra deck. Just because I want to be able to play that engine every single turn and just constantly be like making my opponent start over again. Then for the fusions, we've got 1 Rocket Ride for your instant fusion target, summon back on your turn. Then we've got 1 Weather Washer to summon back on the opponent's turn and stop them from being destroyed by battle. Can floodgate out a lot of decks that like don't destroy things, but like are keen to destroy things in the battle phase. This just like stops them, so it's great. Then we've got 2 copies of Battle Butler. So the reason why I'm playing 2 copies of Battle Butler is because I want to be able to generate this card all the time. Stripping my opponent of board presence is great. The fact that you can resolve it twice in a turn is insane. Yeah, so the reason why I'm playing 2 is because I always want to have access to the second. I don't want to find myself without one of these 3 cards being able to, like, generate it. It's just too bad if you, like, can't generate a Battle Butler or a Rip Roaring Rooster on your turn. It's quite a nice coincidence that these ended up together. But you always want to be ending on at least a way to summon this on your opponent's turn. If you can't do that, you've probably lost the game. Then, finally, we've got 1 copy of Totally Awesome and 1 copy of Abyss Dweller for what you end on when you're doing certain combos. But that will wrap us up here for this one. So, as always, if you do have any recommendations that you would make, comment them down below. Overall, like, I found I don't like the Mystic Mine version of this deck, simply because I don't like playing Mystic Mine as a card in general. At a higher tier event, if those ever come back, I would consider playing it, simply because, like, you're there to win. And, like, I find in situations, like, the card's unfair, but the card wins. Like, you can't not refute that. And this deck, like, utilizes it so well with the fact that, like, you can have your opponent go to 1 monster, and you're just like, oh yeah, cool, I use my quick effect. My card leaves the field. You're now locked under Mystic Mine, which is great. But, yeah, as always, I've been Ben from NolanTCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.